Power on.
Computer, load up Sovryn Tech template version 30. Be quick about it. The show's already a day late, and I don't want to keep the listeners waiting any longer than they have to.
Bringing up the template now, Agent Sovryn. If you are finished in Unimatrix 0, I'll shut it down now to conserve studio energy reserves.
Yeah, go ahead. I was supposed to meet Pixel there today, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen now. Whoa. Computer, what in the goddamn hell is that alert about? Fuck, didn't I tell you to change that sound? Sounds like I'm on the bridge of the Hypercronius or something.
Apologies, Agent Sovryn. Unimatrix 0 isn't shutting down properly due to the recent October 2018 update.
Piss and shit. Figures. Alright, can you put Unimatrix 0 on standby? I'll have to look at the code later. So much for virtual reality.
Unimatrix 0 is now in standby. Sovryn Tech template version 30 is loaded. You may begin the show.
Good. Let's light this candle. Power on.
Earth, 2018. The alliance between governments and tech giants has led to the rise of the surveillance society, distraction technology, the attention wars, and the erosion of your mind. But one show stands against this insidious system. Hosted by the podcast champion, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He and his co-host formed the Intellectual Resistance. It's time for Sovryn Tech.
You're dressing all in black, from your front to your back, and all your evil ways, they seem to go on for days, and as a matter of fact, you got one. Smash it up, burn it down, tearing up the underground. You wanna live like a super villain, back in the lineup, before your time's up. You wanna live like a super villain. Alright. You've been knocking down these doors, you've been filling up this room. You run around the place like your name was Dr. Doom. You're a killer of culture, a vulture of style, and it won't be that long before you end up on trial. You're gonna smash it up, burn it down, tearing up the underground. You wanna live like a super villain, back in the lineup, before your time's up. You wanna live like a super villain.
Woo, baby, you know, it might be a day late, but it's always great. It is time for that Sovryn Tech, and you are being hosted, by the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, ready to bring it all on. And as usual, we have a shit ton to get into in this episode. Oh boy. And you know, you're coming, or I'm coming to you. I mean, if you're coming, great. But I'm coming to you from Ice Planet Zero, baby, because it is snowing in New England now. Holy shit. Actually, the first snow was, last week, I guess. Or, well, it's right. This is getting released on Sunday. So anyway, it was the previous week. So whatever, 2 weeks ago was the very first snow. And wow. Didn't see that coming. I mean, it happens, and like I remember when I first moved up. I didn't move. Not when I moved to New Hampshire. Actually, is it today? Would today the 28th? Holy shit! I didn't even think about this. Well, this is a cause for some celebration. But as this is getting released on October 28th, 2018, that makes it officially, as of this day, officially 7 years ago. In fact, I remember it was a Saturday. So it was 2011, October 28th, on a Saturday night. This is before Sovryn Tech was the thing. I moved to New Hampshire for, of course, at the time, for the Free State Project, freestateproject.org, if you're wondering what the hell that is. And I moved here, and wow, my life has never been the same, and in many ways, never been better. That is, wow, I didn't even realize it. What a fitting day for this show to come out on. I almost want to talk about my moving to New Hampshire, and what was behind that and kind of like how I'm feeling about it now. But I think that's a conversation perhaps that I'll save for another time. But boy, cue the band. I mean, it's 7 years I've been here. That's amazing. So the point I was going to bring up was that actually when I moved, originally, I grew up in New York, but when I moved back, at one point I moved to Florida, and when I moved back up from Florida to New York, that was in October. Boy, I seem to always move in October, or at least like plan to move in October. That's interesting. Anyway, in October of 2007, I believe it was, I moved back up to New York, and like the day I arrived, the snow just happened, and that was early October when I made that move. So it's not like it's uncommon for there to be snow in October in New England, but lately, since the winters I think have been relatively mild in the past 7 years since I've been in New Hampshire. The first winter was a little rough, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it's already snowing. So it's been happening, and I am coming to you from what I call Ice Planet Zero, which is your way of knowing that it's an episode from the winter time and when snow is on the ground. But anyway, yes, like I said, we have a lot to get into, and I'm sorry, it has brought me pause that I have been in New Hampshire for 7 years now. And I know so many of you have also moved to New Hampshire in that time frame, and some of you I look forward to. Some of you emailed me based upon a conversation, I guess, a couple weeks ago on the show, where I was talking about how I want people in my life, like in real life, not people that I just talk to on the internet and so on. And I know some of you have moved. Some of you have actually reached out to me that you're in New Hampshire now, and you'd like to hang out and everything. And I'm going to take you up on that, I think, in the very near future here. So anyway, enough of that. Enough of that bit of reminiscing. Yeah, boy, if we're going to cue a band, yes. Yeah. Snurdly? No, not Snurdly. Yeah, John, get the Little River Band going. I love Little River Band. Big fan. Reminiscing. What a great song. Anyway, all right. So, let's start talking up the stories. Let's get into our Foreplay for the week, where we talk about all the little stories going on in the tech and sometimes science world. This week's going to be a lot of tech, though. And we'll start it off with something that, well, I guess we could use some good news from the Microsoft front, right? Because I can't, I kind of, you're going to get the pun here. I kind of defended Microsoft, and I still do. I still feel bad for Microsoft because it is so hard, I think, to program an operating system that can do everything. And I mean run all the hardware that Microsoft Windows in general, not just Windows 10, but that Windows in general can run, that can handle all the different, ways that all of the hardware is put together and everything. I mean, the ability to do that and all the different software out there, available for Windows. It's a minor miracle that Windows 10 is even remotely as stable as it is. I mean, it really is, folks. And let's be clear on this, because I know you're going to say, well, Linux can run on, and look, I love Linux. I'm not making fun of Linux. Okay, Linux can run on everything. It's a general purpose operating system. Blah blah blah. Yeah, but even Linux can't handle the amount of hardware, and bring up all the drivers and everything that Windows can. I mean, and I know why. I understand, because there's a lot of proprietary shit out there and whatever. Again, I'm not making fun of Linux at all. I never would. Okay, I'm just saying that, let's have a little sympathy for the devil here. Okay, with Microsoft. But I mean, the October update, I mean that they just keep finding out more problems that it had, and supposedly Microsoft is going to shake up their development process. I don't know. I'll tell you. I think this is not what I want to talk about. I have something positive to talk about with what's going on with Windows, but I think the real issue, and I've brought this up before, is a lot of this concept, this abstract concept of extreme programming that's been around since the 90s. We used to have to wait years between Windows releases, and you'd have the service packs and everything that even those would take years to come out and so on. And maybe Microsoft is just learning a really hard lesson, that to try and match this even yearly update cycle, and they're doing twice a year really, but this yearly update cycle, say that mobile does, to try and, I don't know, it almost feels like, I mean, I ask myself why they're doing this in the first place, because it's not like, even with the October update, okay, the October 2018 update, sure, you had dark mode and you had a few other things kind of come in, but there's no, like, it's not a major re-release. I mean, and even the story I'm about to tell you about, I think is a huge, you don't want to use the word quantum. I don't think, I'll tell you. Okay, I love the show Quantum Leap. Sam Beckett, fuck yes. I've reviewed it years ago on the show. One of the greatest shows ever made, hands down. But you want to be careful using the word quantum leap these days, because for some reason in the news cycle, there is a shit ton of news about quantum computers and like, they're here. Oh, you better get ready, blah, 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 whatever. It's literally just part of the news cycle. Quantum computers are not that close. I've talked about this. Maybe it was in a Patreon episode. If you want to become a patron, sovereigntech.com, get your hookup. Okay. But no, don't get too excited. I mean, just look, if you're saying but look at how many sources, TechCrunch and TechRadar, Tech Republic, and whoever the fuck, cram it up their ass, whatever, news source is talking about quantum computers, it must be here. No, okay. They just need something to talk about besides, the latest shit from Microsoft, I guess, even though that's certainly part of the news cycle as well. But what we're about to talk about is, in my opinion, I would use the term quantum leap, but I think a huge leap in actual PC security. But we'll get to that in a second. But the point I was making is that it's not like we're getting these major revisions. Not really. I mean, there's some stuff happening under, in security underneath, but it's not like revisions like back when, we were dealing with Windows XP, and then you had Windows XP Service Pack 2 come out, and it literally, like, foundationally changed Windows XP. It pretty much created a whole new operating system. You added in firewall, a lot of these other different technologies that were available for the very first time with Windows XP Service Pack 2. And maybe we just got to get back to that. Like, maybe Microsoft needs to calm the fuck down about these supposed 2 major revisions twice a year, these 2 new versions of Windows 10. Because I think it's just all psychological. It's just to keep people excited and to keep them feeling like they're getting a new operating system. Because with your mobile device, right, it does feel like you're constantly getting a new operating system if you're either A, dealing with an iOS device, or B, perhaps if you have either, if you have a Pixel phone or maybe a Nexus device that's still getting something, which I don't think most of them are, or if you have an Android One phone. If you have those, then you're going to get your yearly updates or so. Now, of course, the real reason that, like there's a new version of Android every year, and probably there's a new version of iOS every year, certainly for Android it's true. iOS might be a little bit different just because Apple works under somewhat of a different rule set as far as business goes, somewhat. But the real reason there's a new version of Android every year is to make investors in Alphabet/Google think that they're doing something, like that they're doing something important, because honestly, a lot of the major updates, there's some stuff going on underneath the hood with, new versions of Android. But at the same time, they're not even having, it's a lot of it's cosmetic, right? Oh, we're switching to material design instead of hollow. Why? like seriously, why? I could have sworn, Google, that you told me that hollow design, like the design language for the UX UI. I was pretty sure you said the hollow design is the most advanced ever. And your robo font is just, the bee's knees. Why is material design better? I don't get it. So you have to understand that a lot of these updates really have, there might be some interesting things happening under the hood, but you don't exactly get a whole ton of reports on that unless you're following more of like an extreme site where they really give you a lot of like the very minor detail news, say like Android Police or something like that, one of those. And I'm not knocking them at all. That's what they do. But yeah, there's really it's all kind of bullshit. Like the whole, in fact, it reminds me of from the movie Tron Legacy, one of my favorite movies. In Tron Legacy, where, where Bruce Boxleitner, reprising his role 20 years later, as Alan Bradley says to the head of Incom, they're releasing their new version of their operating system. He's like, so what's different about this year's operating system? And the CEO, in a moment of clarity and honesty, says, well, we put a 10 on the box, or we put a 9 on the box, whatever it was. They just and that's it. They put another number at the end. And like maybe they did something, they refreshed the look a little bit, and it makes you feel like you've got something new. And it makes investors feel like, ooh, look, this company's doing something. I'll keep giving them money, when they're really doing jack shit, right? I mean, by and large. So anyway, that was a total side tangent, total side rant there. As far as that goes. But the point being is, how do you really solve this? Let's stop the extreme programming and let's do a little, maybe what we could call slow programming, and maybe get this shit right. I mean, you can never get anything 100%, and, one can argue there's no such thing as 100% security. There's such a thing as 100% math, but 100% security, the implementation is always where the problem arises, right? Even if the math is say the encryption or security is perfect. Okay. But let's get into some slow programming, shall we? Let's take a fucking breather. The problem is we can't, because Silicon Valley is obsessed with growth and not so much with security or stability or, the consumer, honestly. Like, they really don't give a shit about the consumer because they want that growth, but at the same time, they have their own goals that they're trying to reach, and they're trying to sell that to you, and however the fuck they pull that off. Anyway, getting way out in the weeds on all this. So the reason I said you'll get the pun in a minute is I was defending Microsoft. Well, this first bit in the foreplay is actually about Windows Defender. Which Windows Defender, by the way, I have continued to recommend. Like, don't install third-party, antivirus and security software. Just don't. All right, just rock Windows Defender. It's baked into the operating system in such a unique way because it's made by Microsoft itself, who makes the fucking operating system. You're never going to really beat that. And in fact, we've talked about, this might be 2-3 years ago, when we talked about how antivirus software was actually severely hampering the security of web browsers, just in development and code. Because, for years, web browser makers, coders, Mozilla and Google, etc., were trying to appease the AV, the antivirus, security software crowd, as to where, they're trying to be kind of compatible with that and everything, and it was just causing all kinds of problems, and it was holding up the actual development improvement, be it speed, other things, but also the security of web browsers, which security for web browsers, pretty fucking important, considering it's the most used piece of software for just about everybody on their PC or on their mobile device even. That's a very real problem. So I've said for a very long time, don't use antivirus software at all. If you do want to use something, maybe you could use Malwarebytes if you want something a little bit extra, but that does a very specific thing. It's not so much looking for viruses and other exploits. It's looking very specifically for malware, which is in many ways its own class. So Windows Defender, Microsoft pulled off a pretty amazing trick just recently, and they are rolling this out to Windows insiders who are running, beta versions effectively of Windows 10. But you can also force this on, I think, any version of Windows above, was it 1309? I'm sorry, 1309. What the hell am I saying? 1703. 1309. That's a really old version of Windows 10 before there was even Windows 10, because that would have been September 13. Well, yeah, anyway. So, yeah, version 1703 and up can actually force to turn this on. What it is they figured out how to sandbox Windows Defender. So Windows Defender will, and this is something they've been doing with a lot of services and apps within Windows 10 itself, including Microsoft Edge, where they sandbox the entire web browser. This is a great thing because it separates it from other bullshit going on within the operating system. Okay. Now, the importance of doing this with security software is that it can stand alone, and at the same time, while it's almost panopticon, where, you can't, like all the other software, potentially malicious software or exploits, whatever, running on your machine, can't look into what Windows Defender is doing. Windows Defender can see what the malicious software, or malicious code is doing. And so that's brilliant, to be able to pull that off. This is not an easy thing to do. And in fact, it's, as far as I know, Windows Defender is the very first piece of security software, AV or otherwise, to run as in a sandbox. For Windows anyway, and not that like Mac or even Linux really has a whole ton of security software going for it. But this is the first time I think that that's ever been done. This is a very serious and impressive technical challenge, and Microsoft has pulled it off. I don't know that there's. I would tell you, hey, I do. The link's in the show notes to show you how to the command to automatically turn it on. And then you have to restart your computer. I would tell you, go ahead and turn it on. I have already. But then, so much shit seems to go wrong with updates that Microsoft comes out with. You might want to wait. So you might not want to turn it on. But if you want to turn it on, this is brilliant. This is genuinely, this might be one of the biggest deals for security within Windows itself, honestly, since Windows XP Service Pack 2, when they gave you like the built-in firewall and so on. Really, this is huge. The implications here certainly are massive. Now, of course, somebody wants to crack the joke. Well, but it's Windows. It's the whole thing's malicious software. And I get it. Okay, I get your point. But if you're running it, as I do, and I know as most Sovryn Tech listeners do, well, this is actually really, really great security. And we might get into the point around security and proprietary closed source software and other things later on during HackSec when we have an interesting story about iPhones. But anyway, I turned it on mine, and I personally have not run into any issues. But then I never ran into any of the issues that people have been reporting that Windows 10 has been doing for years now. I never ran into the problem with the Kindles getting erased. I never ran into the problem. What were some of the other ones? None of my documents have been deleted. And I have the October 2018 update. I was one of the seekers, as they call them, that was looking for it. I installed it that night when it was released back. What was that, Tuesday the 4th or whatever? I've always been like very active in day one installing Windows updates, and I've just never had Windows 10 updates, and I've never had an issue. But I know other people have. They're very real and very legitimate. So anyway, I've turned it on, hadn't run into an issue, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you won't. So speaking of issues, and sorry, that's an inside joke. Speaking of other issues, well, you know what? Before we get into issues, this is kind of an issue, but Firefox has released version 63, and I believe this is for mobile and desktop. And they have put out a very interesting new ability called Enhanced Tracking Protection. And this is something else that I have absolutely turned on. And this can break some websites, but it pretty much stops third-party cookies from being able to track you at all. It's supposed to allow the third-party cookie to effectively still run, but run in such a way that it blocks them from taking any kind of identifying data about you in so doing. And so it effectively stops it, but it stops it in the way that it's supposed to make the website still more or less function. And this is, as I understand it. So this is something else that I've turned on. The privacy features overall that Firefox has been putting in, especially since Firefox Quantum, like the Facebook container and so on, and a lot of the other do not track abilities, has been really, really impressive. I really have been amazed at that. And so far I've been pleased. I haven't run into any sites. I don't go to a whole ton of websites, but I haven't run into any sites where having the enhanced tracking protection on has been turned on where it's been an issue. But you may run into them. I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, it's a very nice when it's activated. It lets you know when it's activated, and there's it's actually a very nice little animation where a shield will show up, usually where the lock is, like the little green or broken lock for telling you whether or not a site is SSL secured. In the address bar, a little shield will come up, and like it'll have this kind of wiping effect of like a pink color, and it looks really slick where it'll show up. Also, Firefox version 63, speaking of colors, it now will automatically go to whatever theme you have across your operating system. If you have dark mode on, it'll go to dark mode and so on, which is pretty nice. Not like websites won't go to dark mode, but Firefox itself will go to dark mode, and it works very well. Another interesting thing, and I don't recommend this. Like, I get it why Mozilla's doing this, And one could argue that it's for security, but I think it's a little bit of an ugly practice that I don't approve of, that Mozilla is doing. But Mozilla has partnered with Proton VPN. Now, Proton VPN is also the same company that does Proton Mail. I am a fan, by and large, of Proton Mail. Proton VPN, I can't really speak much to it. It's not the VPN that I use. But if you trust Proton Mail, you might as well trust Proton VPN. I think that's not unfair to say. I still, to this day, use private internet access as my VPN. If I were going to go away from private internet access, I've recommended AirVPN in the past. That's a great alternative. Also, if you are a user of, if you happen to use riseup.net, which is a fine service out there for all you anarchists, if you're to use them, they have their own VPN, and I think that's fine to use. But I would set up my own VPN going forward if I was going to stop using private internet access. But Proton VPN might be just fine. Also, who else came out with a VPN is actually Namecheap came out with their own VPN service, which I'm intrigued by. And I by and large trust Namecheap. I use them for pretty much all of my website hosting, just about all of my website hosting. I use Namecheap. I have been using them for years, and they have been nothing but wonderful with anything I've asked them about, anything I've wanted to do. I mean, it's just really, really rock solid stuff. So that's one to consider too. But Proton VPN, I mean, again, if you like Proton Mail, I guess you could trust it. But the weird thing is that this is the first time. So what's going to happen is that if there is some kind of situation that Mozilla can effectively detect with Firefox, where, you might need a VPN to be able to do what you're doing. Like you're going to a website and it recognizes that you're being geo-blocked, which the browser would know that without collecting any kind of odd information, frankly. It will recommend to you, would you like to use Proton VPN? And it is offering it to you at the price of $10 a month. And what's weird about this is that Mozilla has recommended services in the past, like apps and whatever and extensions in the past for you to use, but they've never offered one that like actually costs something, or where you had to put money down on it. Now, I'm a firm believer in not using free VPN services. In fact, I am a firm believer in not using any free, free as in money, okay, as in not having a monetary value, not free as in open source. I always recommend open source, okay, but I'm saying, or not that all open source software is secure. I'm saying that I freely recommend open source software, okay, and a lot of that does come for free, granted, but for a lot of online services, I never recommend using anything that's honestly free, unless it's something like riseup.net, but even that I recommend donating to on a monthly basis if you do use riseup.net. So even if there's something for free, like open source software, I recommend you donate to the developers of the open source software. Bottom line being is I never recommend doing anything for free on a computer. Ever. Okay. Now you might, and if I've ever said differently in the past, let me make this point very clearly to you. Okay, now I know I've never said differently about VPNs. I've always said pay for a fucking VPN, even if they offer you, like if it's like RiseUp, if they offer you a free one, fucking donate to them, asshole, okay? Because they're offering you a tremendous service. So with VPNs, with any online software, even email, you should be paying for your email. In fact, we might talk about that a little later in the show. You should be paying for it. Because if you're not paying for it with money, you're paying for it with something else. And honestly, whatever that something else is, it's probably worth a lot more than the monetary value that you should be giving them. And the thing is that you're not able to take advantage of the monetary value of what they're taking. So why is Gmail free? Well, because they're scraping your fucking emails and to serve you ads and to pretty much take your privacy and tell you to more or less forget about it, right? You should be paying for everything. You really should. You pay for your, unless you're buying a coffee at McDonald's, you pay for your, which I hope that you would, you wouldn't just go somewhere and just use unless it's like a public library, but then you're paying for that with taxes, and taxation is theft. Yes. Okay. But wherever you go, like if you're going to some restaurant, I hope you actually buy something at the restaurant and you don't just use their Wi-Fi for free and not actually buy anything there. But you should be paying for an email service. That way you don't have to worry about, how are they offering this to me for free? Because you should always be asking that question. Now, I'm not saying that things should always cost money or that even in the future such a thing should be. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in our present system that we live within, yes. In the way Silicon Valley has things set up, yes, you should be paying for shit. Okay, because if you're not, you're paying for it in some other way than money, and that other way could be a very real problem for you. And honestly, like, fuck Google making money off of you like that. Really. So I don't necessarily have, like, again, my problem's not necessarily with Proton VPN or paying for a VPN. That's not the problem at all. It is a little odd just that Mozilla is effectively like looking to kind of get a cut of this. Okay. Now you could say to me, well, wait a minute. Firefox is for free. How are they making money? They're a nonprofit. Okay, now I don't want to get in an argument about nonprofits and all this shit. It's like, well, there should be no such thing as a nonprofit. Everything should be for profit. Well, yeah, I don't want to get into that. Okay, that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm saying is that they're a nonprofit and they are effectively set up. Firefox is set up. The way Firefox started was not necessarily to make money, but because people who wanted to make money with web services, okay, knew that, holy shit, we have to break up Microsoft's monopoly as far as how this goes. Okay. As far as web browsers go, because at the time they had a monopoly with Internet Explorer, Netscape Navigator was not doing well, etc. And so people got together, investors and so on, and they said, all right, we got to fund this. We got to make this sort of thing happen. And they did. Okay. As to where Google, the reason they made a web browser, again, that was people knew this is a piece of software that's so important. We've got to open it up. Right. And of course you can donate to the nonprofit, right, and help out Mozilla, so it doesn't have to be free, okay, and effectively that's what these people did, years ago, is they more or less donated to make sure that there was an alternative available, okay. Google's web browser, now why is that free? Well, because they collect all the fucking data about you, okay. They are making a lot of money off of you using Chrome, and money you don't ever get to see. So anyway, this is it's an abstract concept, but it's an important one to understand, is that we have a very real problem when you should be very wary of just about any service, unless it's coming from, like, say, the Linux community, and even that you can donate to Ubuntu and so on, or Canonical, the company that makes Ubuntu. You should be very concerned when something literally costs nothing. Okay, because with Silicon Valley, the only way something costs nothing most of the time, or not the only way, but generally the way that works is because they are making money off of you some other way. And it's probably some other way that is not at all to your benefit. For example, this recent story, and this also happened this week. It was announced. Massive ad scam stole millions through Android apps. I want to read it quickly. We're in the Foreplay. I usually don't read stories, but I just want to read a bit of this. This is from Engadget. Google is clamping down on a fraudulent advertising network of over 125 Android apps and websites that have stolen hundreds of millions in ad dollars. A BuzzFeed report laid bare the huge scale of the scheme, which saw scammers from, quote unquote, We Purchase Apps, I guess that's the name of the company, acquire established apps from developers, transferring them to a web of front and shell companies in Cyprus, Malta, British Virgin Islands, Israel, and Bulgaria. They then tracked the behavior of the app's human users and mimicked it using a, quote, vast network of bots, end quote, allowing them to generate fake traffic and con marketers out of millions for in-app ads, including those run by Google itself. And all the while, the real human data would mask the fake generated info, making it even harder to detect any wrongdoing. Most of the scam apps identified by BuzzFeed were games, while others included a flashlight app, a selfie app, and a healthy eating app. They were reportedly installed more than 115 million times, with one app, Everything Me, that's the name of the app, reaping 20 million installs alone. So these are not just some, like a lot of times when we get Stallion breaking in, a lot of times when we get these kinds of stories, they're usually some kind of it's like some app nobody's ever really heard of, and only some idiot in, Broken Bow, Oklahoma would end up installing or something, right? Not to say that there's idiots in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. There are Klingons, or wait, no, sorry. Oh, I got confused there. but so anyway, but you get my point. Usually it's just some, who the hell would install that? Like they fell for it or something. No, these were major apps. Okay, and 125 of them, you could say, well, out of the millions of apps, blah, blah, that's a drop in the bucket. Not when they're ones that get 20 million installs. Reading a little bit more, after being alerted to the scheme last week, Google began removing the apps from its Google Play Store. Though, as noted by The Verge, it seems Everything Me is still live, so one of the biggest apps of the bunch is still out there. According to the Big G's findings, around $10 million had been accrued through fake views from marketers, but fraud detection from Pixelate, which first spotted the scheme in June, puts the figure at $75 million per year. Quote, "We are actively tracking this operation and continually updating and improving our enforcement tactics," end quote, said Google. So, point being here is that, again, these were free apps that were all making just a ton of money off of ad dollars and whatever else, and who knows what they were actually collecting about you and selling off that data as well. That's my point. The shit that's free, it's not none of it is really free, and I think we're all starting, or I've known this, but I think Sovereign Tech listeners have known this, but it seems like everybody's starting to understand. Ooh, wait a second, how are you giving this to me for free? This isn't how the world works. Not right now. What's the score here? I mean, myself, like any app that I use. In fact, even Stephanie and I have had conversations about this recently. Like, if an app doesn't offer me either a subscription, which, there's problems with that model itself, but if it doesn't offer me a subscription, or if it doesn't actually offer me, a way to just buy it outright, I probably won't install it. 9 times out of 10, 9.9999975, the warp speed of Voyager. I won't install that shit. Okay, actually, the warp speed of Voyager is warp 9.9975, but I added some nines there. Doesn't matter. So, that's and the reason being is because I don't trust these ad networks. I don't trust shit that's free. It doesn't make any sense to me. Unless I really know something about it, and you bet your goddamned ass, I donate to the Free Software Foundation. I donate to Canonical. I donate to Rise Up. Go down the fucking list. I donate. Because I don't want I know the shit ain't free at the end of the day, even if they offer it to me as such. Even the people that are ethically offering it for free, so that activists can have it, or whoever can have it, or kids can have it, or something. Great, but if I can somehow support them, I want to. It's a very important thing. If something is free, you have to start asking the question, why the fuck is that? And look into it and do the research for your goddamn self. Or hell, if you really want, you can ask me and maybe I can get to it in an important messages segment on the show. But boy, I'll tell you who's not getting away with it for free. This is pretty interesting. Not that I support any government action, just to make that abundantly clear in case it wasn't clear to you. But in Italy, of all places, this is just in Italy, even though most of the headlines that were getting shared around this wouldn't tell you what country it was, so you might think it was happening in the U.S. or something. No, just in Italy, Apple and Samsung are being fined for deliberately slowing down phones. Now, this is very reminiscent, if you remember, in December of 2017, where Apple finally fessed up and said, yeah, we're slowing down your phone so that way you think your battery life is, your iPhone, so that way you think your battery life is still really great. But because of the nature of, lithium batteries, well, they actually go bad over time, and it's in fairly short order, and we won't put bigger batteries in your smartphones because we have some kind of fucked up obsession with lighter and thinner, and no, they didn't say that part, but anyway, we knew that this was going on with Apple, that they were slowing down phones, and that's still an ongoing, there's class action lawsuits against Apple in the U.S. about this one, in California, I think, where they're all consolidated. And this is still kind of an ongoing thing as far as what's going to be the reality of that. Of course, Apple was offering like a discounted battery replacement at Apple stores, ever since they more or less acknowledged it. But for Samsung, this is something new. So the Italian government is fining Apple 10 million euros, and Samsung, I think, 5 million euros. And they're outright saying in the legal language, in the documents, they're saying because these are planned obsolescence practices, which is ironic because I mean, now, okay, is it actually planned obsolescence? Apple had sort of an excuse that seemed to make a little bit of sense, but they wouldn't tell users that it was happening. Like, even if, okay, here's my point. Because Samsung, they responded to these accusations by the Italian government, and they say they're going to appeal it, and they're like, no, we've never done this before. And there's some very specific points brought up that, well, like the Galaxy Note 4 was slowed down by software updates meant for the Galaxy Note 7, but not by software, but actually Android operating system updates designed for the 7 that ended up slowing it down, etc. So Samsung's not fessing up to this, okay? But, Apple kind of made a case. Samsung might end up making the same case. Of course, they've had battery issues, haven't they? Woo, don't bring that on a plane, baby. Don't bring that Samsung phone there. But anyway, they may not claim why they did it, even though they may be doing it for the same reasons that Apple did it, or what Apple claimed why they did it was to make you think you're still getting great battery life, even if it meant that your phone started to act significantly more sluggish than usual, or perhaps that it never had before and now it does. I personally think you can say that that's the reason, but even the phone to like keep slowing down could still have the side effect, the marketing side effect of you feeling like, okay, it's time for me to get a new phone. Okay, so they can claim some kind of, benevolence in why they did this, Samsung and Apple. But at the end of the day, they could still be, it's not a zero-sum game. There isn't only one reason, perhaps, that they're doing this. There can be more than one reason, and planned obsolescence could be a major part of that. Okay, now it's funny because, you get a lot of people, a lot of your more capitalist types who will just come out and say that, oh no, planned obsolescence never happens. That's all leftist garbage and bullshit. And yes, it does. I've talked about it many times on this show for years, and I've gotten in many arguments about it. Absolutely, planned obsolescence is absolutely a thing. Just about any tech company you talk to, or that hardware manufacturer, will tell you that sure it's kind of an open secret that yes, of course they do that. Okay. And I've brought up the cases where it happens. So, they could come up with their excuses as to why this doesn't happen, but that doesn't mean that that's the only reason that they are bringing out software updates that end up slowing down your phone. Inherently, even just, updating, like say with Google, updating to material design, like some new design language that requires more processing power. In a way, that's almost a planned obsolescence, because that's saying, well, everything afterwards, yeah, after a certain point, sorry, like, it's going to just run slower on there. But, we had to do this design refresh because fuck you. So, it sort of tacitly happens anyway, whether, it's admitted or a government is fining a company over it or not. This sort of thing goes down. With Apple, I guess I'll give them some credit for being a little more honest about it, but it's more that, would they have been honest if they weren't found out? I think it's more that they were found out. And with Samsung, the time will probably come where they'll admit it too. Because with Apple, people were theorizing with evidence, not just like rampant speculation. Okay, they were theorizing with evidence. Apple's doing something funny with their iOS updates that's making my phone slow down. Like there's, and you could follow the trail. I want to say the first stories I saw about it were like in 2012, but then it took them 5 years to finally admit, yeah, we do that. And they came out with one reason that they do it, but that doesn't mean that it's the only one. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. Now, does more than Apple and Samsung engage in this behavior? Oh, I bet your ass. I bet you just about every one of them does it. Okay, any of them that really like puts out a software update. In fact, it's kind of ironic, right? Because you want software updates because generally they offer some kind of security, and they genuinely do. Again, a software update doesn't have to have just one purpose. So you want to make sure that you're getting that. And one of the arguments for not getting like a really inexpensive or no name brand or low name brand, maybe that's a term we could coin, smartphone, Android smartphone like Blue or one of these other ones, I mean, there's a lot of reasons not to get those, but one of them is that, well, they don't get software updates, and so my device is inherently less secure than, other devices out there that command maybe $100 more in their price. Completely valid thing to bring up. But now it's almost like, well, yeah, but at least they're not going to get the software update that slows down my phone. But really the response to that, of course, is that, well, it doesn't matter if you don't get the software update that slows down your phone from the hardware, from the phone manufacturer themselves. Google is going to force the issue with, coming up with bullshit UI designs that make your apps run slower just by default, on older hardware. Now, all of that said, a company that seems to buck that trend, Motorola. This was an interesting story that came out. First off, okay, there was what some are considering, and look, I don't give a rat's fucking ass about regulations, be it if you find them to be good things, if you for some reason think they have a positive effect. I argue every regulation has an across the board, perhaps unseen negative effect, but whatever. You think that it has a positive effect, that's what you think. Or if you think it has a negative effect. There was I guess you could say, landmark decision out of the Copyright Office, or, well, effectively Congress really it would end up being, that you are, owners of a lot of consumer electronic devices, not just smartphones, but smartphones is kind of where it's the most important, I suppose, are allowed to break DRM to repair their devices. This is a pretty big deal. And a big conversation could be had around that. But now, more interesting than that, I think. I mean, that's one thing, and fuck regulations, okay? More interesting than that is Motorola's move this past week, which Motorola has partnered with iFixit, which I'm a big fan of iFixit. They're the guys that do the teardowns of how easy is it to repair the latest iPhone or the latest Pixel phone or the latest MacBook or the latest Dell or whatever, okay, can you actually work on it? And they sell you great equipment and toolkits and everything to be able to actually fix your devices, whatever they happen to be. iFixit, or Motorola, has partnered with iFixit to allow you to fix your phone, to sell you like official phone repair kits, even, of all things, to repair your fucking battery. And the kits run anywhere between like $75 to a couple $100. There's battery kits, they run about $40, but you're really getting a new battery for $40. I think with the iPhone that you take to the Apple Store, the discounted price was like $30, and I think that discount ends in December of this year, of 2018, and then it goes back up to like $80 to $100 or something like that. But this is making a very interesting case. Look, this is how you actually solve the problem, right? Okay. Is that you don't push software that slows down the phone, all right? Or you don't push legislation that gives you permission, okay, to break DRM and to replace and fix replace parts and fix your device. The phone manufacturer actually partners with a fucking other company, a third party, to say, hey, here you go. Here's all the documentation on how to fix it. Here's instructions. Here's the official tools and everything else that you need to actually fix your smartphone. This is fucking great. Remarkable for it to come out, because Motorola, the phone side of Motorola, is owned by Lenovo. This is incredible. Like when I saw the headline, I was like, holy shit. Well, I mean, good for you. iFixit, because they're just this little cottage company. I mean, pretty much that has a well-deserved reputation and very trusted by myself included. And for them to actually work with, a phone manufacturer, that's incredible. This is an actual solution. If people can figure it out and you got the instructions and so on, fine, sell them the repair. If people want to repair their phone, I think they're offering it for, let them do it. They're offering it for the Moto Z Force, Moto G5, Moto X Pure, and the original Moto X. The Z2 family may end up getting supported. I don't think like the Moto E4. Up until I got my Nokia 6.1, I had been using my Moto E4 off and on because it was just the most reliable phone that I had. Everything else was crashing on me at various points or running into this issue and that. My Moto E4 went for a good long while. If it had 32 gig of onboard storage instead of 16, I probably would still just use that. I mean, I really love that phone. But good on Motorola for this. This is how you do it. Just fucking, have the actual device manufacturer offer the fucking tools to do it. You don't have to say, well, okay, people get to crack DRM on their devices to fix this stuff, or, you don't have to push software updates that force people to buy other phones, or that, that, save your battery life by slowing your software down or whatever. You don't have to do any of that. Just give people the fucking tools to do it themselves and make them aware that this is going to happen. That was another part of the case being made by the Italian government, was that like Apple wasn't making people aware enough of how lithium batteries work and that this does happen over time. Oh, you mean we should educate people? Well, here's a great way to educate people. iFixit's been doing it forever, and it's great to see a phone manufacturer actually working with them on it. So you see, the Golden Stallion's not just complaining. I've got solutions. In fact, a company came up with it for me, and I think that's fucking brilliant. So anyway, let's get on to some other news here. So this will be our last story for the Foreplay. And this is one that has kind of broader ramifications for Sovryn Tech in general. So this has to do with Oculus, with the VR company Oculus, of course, which is owned by Facebook, which, Facebook famously bought it, infamously more like, bought it for $2 billion in 2014. At the time, the CEO was a guy named Brendan Iribe. I don't know how to say his last name. I apologize. And he is one of the co-founders, along with John Carmack, Palmer Luckey, and so on, of Oculus, back when it was just a Kickstarter. Okay. And he was CEO at the time when Facebook ended up buying it out. He took on more of a development role, working with, getting the original Oculus Rift up and out, but then also to work on the Rift 2, the Oculus Rift 2, which was in development and was going to end up, the Rift technology specifically for Oculus is, meant to be connected to a PC, and it's its most powerful version out there. Because, of course, you have other Oculus technologies, right? You have the Oculus Go, which I own and I use, and I'm actually quite a fan of. And you have the Oculus, you have the Samsung Gear, right? The Gear VR, which that is Oculus technology, and it's a headset, that you slap in a Samsung phone into. And now we have in April of 2019, we have the Oculus Quest coming out, which I will be getting as long as, here's the thing. So I have said, okay, obviously we're anti-Facebook on this show, and in our main story this week, we're going to be even more anti-Facebook. We're going to talk, because Facebook is the gift that keeps on giving. And I feel like I'm starting to hear the rumblings from Sovryn Tech listeners that they have had enough. That they have had enough of Facebook. They're just not going to do it anymore. And not just from Sovryn Tech listeners, but from other people as well. In fact, just recently we were in a hot tub with people, and they were all saying, "Yeah, we don't use Facebook. We don't use Facebook." And blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, fuck yes, okay, it's happening." Cue the meme. It's happening. Blah blah. Whatever. Okay. So. One of the things that I've said for a very long time, I said, as long as John, and I've been very specific on this, and I've said it over and over again, as long as John Carmack is still at Oculus, I am still on board with Oculus, regardless of the owner, because I trust John Carmack. Now, Brendan leaving Oculus and effectively then leaving Facebook, like many people have recently, including Palmer Luckey, who left in 2017. I mean, that had to do with other issues, and Palmer Luckey said that his leaving was not his choice. But that's a whole other story. That gets very political. But, we had the founders of Instagram. They just recently announced they're leaving. I mean, there is this seemingly mass exodus of very high-profile characters within Facebook, the company, and its acquisitions, like Oculus, Instagram, and so on, of them leaving. And I'll admit this is a little worrisome. So Brendan pretty much said that, because what ended up happening is that the Rift 2 has been canceled. They are not going to go forward, it seems, or Facebook is not going to go forward with any PC-connected, hardware, as far as with Oculus. And I think that Brendan just said, well, then fuck you. I'm out of here. I'm not in, because I imagine Brendan really, especially if you've been following Oculus for a long time, they really wanted to push the boundaries of virtual reality and bring it to the mainstream and make it viable. And I would argue they have. Oculus really has. Any other attempts out there, anything being done by Google, and fuck Magic Leap, but anything being done by Google, anything being done by HTC /Steam, whatever companies out there, Oculus was absolutely the powerful and heroic, I dare say, dark horse that came in and brought virtual reality back, made virtual reality real. The Oculus Go, I also think, because of its price point and the fact that it's not hard connected to any other hardware, is a major part of that. I support the decision to have independent VR headsets that don't need a phone slapped to them. I mean, the Oculus Go still kind of connects to a phone, and I imagine the Oculus Quest will it connects to software on a phone. It doesn't connect via wire, or you don't have to slap the phone into it or anything like you would with the Gear VR. Or like Google Daydream, even though there's independent Daydream headsets as well that aren't selling very well. Lenovo's come out with those. But I support that direction of having independent headsets that aren't connected to any other hardware. And I also support the direction with VR where it's more about the feeling and not the raw graphics power. I mean, as a gamer myself, I feel that way about games in general, about any interaction with the screen. It doesn't, even with movies, it doesn't have to look that real. Okay, it can look like, okay, no, I know that that's CGI, or I know that it's this or whatever, or yeah, that's 8-bit, blah, blah, blah. It can do that. What matters is the feeling. Okay, and as an analogy, music. Sure, you can say that, I don't know, Motley Crue's Too Fast for Love, right? Their first album. That doesn't have the same polish and sheen and quality of sound as, say, 89's Dr. Feelgood or anything they've done in recent, that they had done in the past 20 years. It doesn't have that same production level, right? Okay, I appreciate, what production level can do for something. But that doesn't mean that the best music has only been on albums with a higher production level, polish, and sheen, right? The best music could be that very raw sounding that just has all that, that pent up musical prowess that, the band members had, and, kind of their first songs and everything, and just that rawness, that came with that. I think that is true for all creativity, and that includes software, where it's not all about having this beautiful, great graphics or anything like that. We lose something when all we give a shit about is the graphics. Okay, what we need to care about is what does it emote? What kind of feeling does it bring on for another human being? And you don't need great graphics. You don't need, 4K, 8K fucking transmission to allow for that. You just don't. You can do it with 8-bit, and you could have the most incredible human experience ever in 8-bit. Okay? So I'm not concerned about whether or not a virtual reality headset has all of the horsepower that a connected PC would allow for. I'm just not. So I don't necessarily agree with Brendan in this. I am a little worried. I mean, if it is only because they canceled doing the Rift 2 because they're going to concentrate on the Oculus Quest, I mean, then this isn't that concerning. But it does, the timing of it's a little ugly when you have other major people leaving Facebook. I mean, and look, I fully support people leaving Facebook because, that is a company whose name is being tarnished by the second even more. And so to want to get away from that, that makes all the sense in the world. In fact, as much as I'd hate it for John Carmack to leave Oculus, I wouldn't blame him. For that reason alone, just to get away from a company that is so fucking horrendous. Okay? But anyway, I mean, at the same time, I appreciate him, sticking with the company that he started as well. So all of that said, I mean, right now, and based on the verbiage that's out there, it feels like this just has to do with the Rift 2. So I'm not mad about it because at the same time, I wasn't necessarily that supportive of the Rift 2 anyway. I'm way more on board with the Oculus Quest. And it makes sense. From Facebook's perspective, it makes sense because John Carmack, we talked about this in a GameTalk in recent weeks. Carmack came out and said that the Oculus Quest and the Oculus Go, or Oculus's as the company, their main competition was the Nintendo Switch. So they're looking to be an independent platform. They need to be an independent platform. And Facebook is, considering what Facebook and Facebook.com proper is facing, the problems that Instagram perhaps may be facing, and that other parts of the company are facing, developing an entire platform for an entirely new, model and something that is kind of infinitely scalable like the gaming industry is, may only make sense on a business side. But granted, are you going to run into privacy issues? You can, but also, as I've said, another point in favor of Oculus as a company more independently, is that you don't have to log in with your Facebook account. You can log in with an Oculus account, and that's all. And if that ever changes, I may also consider walking away from Oculus Technologies and hardware in general as well. So anyway, interesting, that it happens around this time. There might be more to it. I'm not saying that there isn't, but right now it more or less feels like the Rift is because the Rift 2 has been dropped. But also, I don't think the Rift 2 dropping is any kind of death knell or any lack of confidence in VR. In fact, I think it's the exact opposite. It's VR getting to where it needs to be, which is an independent platform and technology in a very real way away from the PC. Not that I don't want it to be able to connect to the PC, but that should more or less be an afterthought, I think, or an after effect, as it were. So anyway, all right, that's it for the Foreplay. We're going to talk more Facebook in a second, because don't think I'm giving this company any credit. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo!
Hey, look! Got an energy spike. Hold on! Launch. Bombing the Narn back to the Stone Age wasn't enough for you?
Then we heard it. The sound of something terrible being born.
This is madness.
Station 3 to Commander Ivanova.
Centauri have launched a full-scale assault.
Time is come and gone! It's our turn now!
2 million tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night. A world where empires rise and fall, where dreams are born and die, where war and hatred are challenged by love and faith. In the third age of mankind, an age plagued by an evil empire that seeks to destroy humanity. It is our last, best hope for peace, for victory, for freedom. It is Babylon 5.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5.
Story of the week.
I'm going to call an audible here. As to where normally I had planned, I actually have a very long story that has to do with Facebook. Why don't I go a week without yelling about Facebook? I mean, maybe I'll end up doing it later. I don't know. I already kind of complained about them earlier, but why not shake it up a little bit? Do something else. So I'm going to talk about actually my personal experience with what has been called in recent years the sharing economy. Okay. I have been pretty critical of this in the past for a variety of reasons. And just like, even though as much as, say, when I watch Netflix and I enjoy me some Voltron Legendary Defender or Season 2 of Castlevania, we might get into that later, as much as I enjoy all that shit, I've talked over the past, I guess throughout the past year or so, I've talked about kind of my rekindling love with Blu-rays and so on. I'm not going to talk about Blu-ray movies with you right now, or Blu-ray discs or whatever. But bottom line being is that it very much appears that everything is pushing towards getting on some kind of subscription model, and you don't actually own anything. You just pay for access to things. Now, this should annoy the fuck out of a lot of people that honestly praise things like Netflix and other services that really don't let you own anything by design. They don't even want you to own anything. But we're talking about the same people who are really hot on property, but I guess, they're okay with not owning anything. All right. But regardless of that, something that I've messed with recently, and this is what I want to talk about, including something that I've talked about on Patreon episodes of Sovryn Tech. I recently went to a Phil Collins concert, and to do so I don't personally own a car. Well, that's about to change, but that's another story for another time. But I personally don't own a car, and it's not exactly needed either. Like, where I live is very walkable and so on. And Stephanie and I, she has a car, and, we can use that to get around or whatever. Not that I can't drive. I can certainly drive. So obviously, as I'm about to tell you. So anyway, I have started using a service called Zipcar. Now, Zipcar is not, I'm not doing this as an ad for Zipcar. Zipcar is not a Sovryn Tech sponsor whatsoever. In fact, I'm not even necessarily going to say nice things about it. Some nice things, but not a lot of nice things, okay? So Zipcar, it's not available anywhere, everywhere. And it's something that in general, if you haven't heard of it, it's kind of a really short-term version of renting a car. This is the basic idea. Okay, so a Zipcar, it costs you, as far as what it costs you, let's see, I think you pay like $7 a month, okay, just to be part of the quote-unquote club that can even get a Zipcar. You can't just get a Zipcar. And they send you a little card. And this card has various information on it, blah, blah, blah. And it's also the thing that you use to initially unlock the car, because on the window, the front window of the car, there's a little card reader there, and it doesn't it's not like something you swipe or anything like that, but you tap the card next to it, and that will give you your initial unlock of the car. But how you actually rent the car, you can do it through the website, you can do it through their main website, or you can end up doing this through through their app, which of course is available for Android and iOS. In general, I've used the app, and it works. The app works very well for what it is. In fact, it's interesting. The app allows you to lock and unlock the car without a key whatsoever. It doesn't let you start it without the key, but it does let you lock and unlock the car, and it has like alerts and other little stuff that can help you out. Like if your car breaks down, you can hit the alert and it'll help you out, or I guess they'll send somebody out for you or whatever. But when you initially rent the car, and usually these cars run for anywhere between $7 to $8 an hour. Certain models cost less than others. If you decide to do it for a day, it's like $70 some odd for the day. It depends. If day being like a 24-hour period, and within that you're given an allowance of some odd 100 miles or so. If you go over that, they, based upon how much you go over, they will charge you over for the mileage. If, like, say you double the amount you do in a day, they charge you double of what it costs to rent the damn thing for a day. This, and when you think about the pricing structure like that, it's no way. I mean, like if you do more than a day, if you do like 2-3 days or something like that, you get a little bit of a discount. But by and large, if you're looking to have something for more than a couple hours, it really is more practical still to just rent a car if you can do that. Okay. Price wise, than it is to use a Zipcar. If you're just looking to get around, for a couple hours or something, a Zipcar is really cheap because, you could spend $14 about, less than $20 and you're done with it. But anyway, you have to get to the Zipcar, of course, just like you would have to go to Hertz or Enterprise or whatever to get a rental car. And again, they're not available everywhere. Now, they do allow for, and this is one part of it that I haven't tested because I've ended up using a Zipcar a few times in the past couple months. You can do like a one-way where you don't have to drive it back, but you have to schedule that. It's all very weird, and I don't even know exactly how that works because, again, they're not available like in every city. There's only very specific cities where you have them. So generally you do a round trip, like you bring it back and you park it exactly where you found it, right? Exactly where you went to go pick it up. And the app will tell you which ones are available. And if there aren't any available because people are using all your ones in your area, well, then you can't rent one. And it'll let you know if there's any kind of scheduling conflicts. You can add on more time if you need to, if it's possible. If somebody's already has it scheduled for another time, it'll just tell you there's a conflict and you can't hold on to it for longer. I don't really know what happens if you don't return it on time, especially if someone else is waiting for it for a certain time, because I haven't messed with that. But, I get a nice little email from them every time I return it on time saying, wow, you're a great zipper, blah, 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 blah. The advantages of this, and I think this is important to talk about because Zipcar seems to be becoming very popular, okay, especially in cities and so on. One of the advantages here is that you don't have to, and this is unlike, I haven't rented a car in a long time, so I don't know, but at least back in the day, rental cars, you had to pay for the gas and everything. With the Zipcar, they actually have a gas card inside the Zipcar, and it allows you to, you don't have to pay for gas. as long as the gas station you go to, because I've been to gas stations that don't accept it, as long as the gas station accepts the gas card, you can use it and you never have to pay for gas. I mean, that's pretty slick. Also, it has a little device that works like an Easy Pass, for highways and everything. And I imagine that depending upon the state that you're in, the little Easy Pass that they offer you will work wherever you happen to be. That way you don't have to pay tolls either. So that's one of the advantages of it, is that when you're driving it, I mean, you really don't have to worry about a thing. What you put down as far as, what you pay for it to rent the Zipcar for however long, that is the only expense that you pay while you drive this, unless you go over the miles or whatever. Not that I've so much experienced that either. But it's very interesting, and this is definitely a big part of that. What happens in a world where people don't actually, own their cars, right? And this is sort of pointing at that. This is a direction that obviously autonomous cars are also kind of pointing at, right? Like, what's the point to owning an autonomous car if you're not there for the joy of driving it and so on? I mean, there's really no reason that your autonomous car, has to be owned by you. It could just be something that's just available when you need it. And because of that same concept, I think a lot of people are very excited about Zipcars in that sense. Now, granted, again, depending upon the pricing structure, this can be a very expensive proposition. If somebody rented a Zipcar for like a week, you'd easily be spending well over $1,000, which, not that long ago, you could have bought a car for $1,000. I mean, so that doesn't exactly make sense. If we're going to get to a future where you just use cars, kind of as you need them, sometimes you need them for like, if you're doing long distance or something like that, a pricing model like a Zipcar is not really feasible, and so anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the Zipcars themselves. So usually the cars are like the one that I've often used is a Ford Fiesta, whatever. It's a small car, but it works great. Obviously, the gas mileage is phenomenal, and it does the job. And obviously, Zipcar does the maintenance for the car and everything like that. A couple times that I've rented it, I got to tell you, like whoever had it before... not the cleanest people in the world. And I get annoyed by that. Like I'm kind of a clean freak. I really like a very clean car. Okay. And not only was it not the cleanest car in the world, but whoever the hell was in it before fucking smelled. I mean, like their BO or whatever odor whatever it was that they were bringing with them stayed in the car. And that kind of sucked. Fortunately, I was more or less going for a hike, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but these are the things that I think people don't think about. Okay, when they're thinking, oh yeah, nobody has to own a car. Well, it's the sharing economy. Everybody will just share. Yeah, but everybody's a little different, and you quickly realize what it's like to not have your own vehicle when you get into a vehicle after somebody who doesn't, say, have your penchant for cleanliness in various ways. Was in it previously, and you really do feel that. Another thing that actually happened, and this is the last time that I rented the Zipcar, it might be the last time that I ever rent a Zipcar. I mean, and not that I can't pay for the gas, I can, but the gas card was missing. And there are no instructions in the app, there's no instructions on the website or whatever of what to do if you can't find the gas card. And I mean, I imagine that I could have, I could just pay for the gas, and then I could email Zipcar and say, hey, I had to pay for the gas, here's my receipt number, blah, blah, blah. The gas card wasn't in there, and they'd probably refund me. And, I mean, that's kind of fine. But again, it points at kind of this overall overarching thing where, if you don't own it, you don't know what you're walking into. You can say, I mean, if we were in a future where like Zipcars, there's always a person or a robot, I guess, there to maintain it and to have it ready and to clean it up and blah, 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 and at all times. Okay, but that's not how this works. I mean, that's not how this works right now. If you live in a city, if you just like walking around and all that stuff and you don't actually need to own a car, like I get it. Like I could see where this could be very helpful for a lot of people, especially if you're just the kind of person who only needs a car maybe for a couple hours or something like that. I mean, the thing is that unless they're, they're not really offering like trucks. I mean, maybe in some areas they do, but it's not like it's something that you could even just rent, to move some furniture. I suppose that's what U-Haul's for, but whatever, I mean, even renting a U-Haul for a day might be might be a less expensive proposition, frankly, than getting a Zipcar. Now, I'll tell you though, so there's some oddities with this that make me a little uncomfortable, and a little uncomfortable about modern cars, which is not new for me. I've talked about this many times over the years on the show. And that is that if you lock the car with the app at any time, you're still within your time frame. If you're renting it for a few hours, whatever, you're within your few hours. If you lock it with the app, the only way that you can start the car is even if you unlock it with the key, you put the key in the ignition and you go to turn the key. The only way you can actually start the car is if you hit unlock on the app. I mean, it's a full lockout, and there's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter if you have the key. There's nothing you can do. Now, that made me feel uncomfortable. Now, here's where it gets worse, is that the other night when I was returning my Zipcar, and I mean, it's even crazy to call it but when I was returning the Zipcar, when I went to try and lock it, I happened to be in an area or at that time, that cell signal was a little bit of a problem. And the app actually logged out of itself. And because I couldn't really get a good data connection, I couldn't log back into the app. I don't even know why I logged out in the first place. But bottom line is I couldn't log back into the app, and I couldn't really lock the car. But now here's the rub. What happens if that happens and you locked it with the app? And you could say, well, then I just won't lock it with the app. And generally I don't. I use the key because I learned this fact very early, when renting these things. But bottom line being is that there's the chance you could get locked out of your Zipcar, and there's not much you could do until you walk somewhere and hopefully find some open Wi-Fi or find some kind of, data connection or whatever, to be able to unlock the car. So first things first, probably not the best idea to lock it with the app unless you're completely done with it. Then you can lock it with the app and you just kind of walk away from it or whatever. But I couldn't even do that because I couldn't log into the app to do it. I just locked, I opened the passenger side door, hit the lock button on the key, and then closed the door and walked away from it. But that bothers me. That there is and please give me a fucking break if you think that this is just a feature for Zipcars, and that this isn't something that's possible with every newer car. I was really bothered by the fact that just by putting a lock command from an app to this car, and I get it, it's not mine, but then that's the whole problem that I'm telling you, okay? That the car's not mine. That, you can just hit this lock feature and then you are locked out and you can't even start the car. How do you feel about that? I mean, you think there isn't going to be some flub where that happens and it's when seconds count? Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it. This is one of my big issues with interconnected anything. Okay, this is just a logical, or dare I say illogical, but logical, under the premise, the logical extension of IoT, and it's just going to your car. I do this and I feel a little terrified. I don't like it. I don't like that that's possible. So I did recently, I have gotten a car, my own car, because frankly, this Zipcar business, and I think renting cars is probably a little different, makes me a little uncomfortable overall. And also, I don't like walking into a car, honestly, a smelly ass fucking car. Okay. So, but it's very weird. And then again, to rely on it, it's totally possible that people could show up late with it. In fact, one day I was going to pick it up and it was my turn to pick it up, and the people, but fortunately I, didn't need it at the exact time that I needed it. And I, didn't go to pick it up until an hour later, but the people that were driving it previously had just arrived. Now, I mean, what's going to happen when it's automated cars? What, is it just going to force you? It's going to say, hey, loser, get in the car because my next drive is waiting for me, and you're either the car's going to leave and you're going to stay here, or you can get in the car and I'm going to take you back. I mean, how is that going to end up even fucking working? Bottom line being is that the sharing economy really only works when you're dealing with a lot of like-minded individuals. And let me tell you how impossible speaking as someone who even lives in New Hampshire, who came here to move to live with like-minded individuals, how hard it is even within that, when it's intentional, to necessarily find a lot of like-minded individuals. Let me assure you, it is quite difficult. Okay, I feel rather unique just about everywhere I go. Now, that might be just a product of being me, of being the Golden Stallion. Woo! But the fact remains. So the sharing economy, we're not there yet. And you could say, well, if it's automated, you know what the real solution could be is that another car that's not busy will just swoop in and take over. Yeah, but what if I wanted, one of the reasons I ordered the Ford Fiesta was, hey, I want a black car. I'm not going to drive anything that's gray. Or I'm not going to drive this, this orange car over here. Are you kidding me? I'm the man in triple black. Everything's black. What if I really, really want that black car? I mean, and you could just say, well, we can solve it just by everything being automated, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't think that's going to solve it. And also, you should be downright terrified of the fact that you might not be able to go and drive the instant that you want to go and drive. And that is something that was very well highlighted by the use of Zipcars. Now, if there are more Zipcars, would it be an issue? I mean, again, that's kind of the solution I think that anybody would come up with. I still don't think that it would exactly be licked or solved. This really feels like another one of those business ideas, and I use that term very loosely. This feels like another one of those business ideas, much like the Google Home and others, where the only way it actually works is if it's what everybody is doing and it's what everybody uses. And that doesn't sit well with me, because maybe I want to own a car. And now I do. So anyway, Zipcars, they work for a couple hours, but boy, I wouldn't rely on these things for anything. And also, the model feels a little uncomfortable, and you really start to understand, the differences in the human condition after you try it a couple times. But we're all individuals, and isn't that beautiful? Anyway, yeah, so there we go. I called an audible. I wanted to talk about my experience with that. I mean, in one way I recommend it, but then on the longer term, no. Just go get your own car. So, all right, that's it. Let's move on to another story. I'll be right back with more Sovryn Tech. We were talking earlier about us saying, really, you should be paying for your email. Well, let me recommend something to you if you feel so inclined to decide to start doing so. I recommend Fastmail. Fastmail, they have been around forever, and they keep up with all the latest technologies, especially security technologies as they pertain to email and even account protection. I cannot recommend them enough. They even do domain hosting. They are phenomenal. But here's the deal. If you use fastmail.sovryn.com, if you use that website, that URL, okay, you are going to get a discount, and Sovryn Tech ends up getting a little cut of that. So you want to work with them. You trust me, if you're looking to get away from Google, you're looking to get away from Gmail, or if you're using Yahoo, go to Fastmail, fastmail.sovryn.com. Jump on it. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. I use it for bbs@sovryn.com. I am nothing but pleased. Do it. Fastmail.sovryn.com. All right, let's get back to the show.
This week in blockchain.
Oh boy, time to talk up some blockchain stuff. Well, this is something that we talked about recently on This Week in Blockchain during this segment, and that was the idea of a blockchain phone. Now, I'm not exactly sold on this concept whatsoever. But it sounds like a lot of people are, because the first blockchain-based phone, of course, there's two of them, one of them coming from HTC, the other coming from, Sovryn Labs, I think it is, Sovryn. That phone's called the Finny, as to where HTC's is the HTC Exodus 1. The Exodus 1 is now available for pre-order, even though most of your headlines, again, would fill you with bullshit saying, oh, the Exodus 1 is launched. They've launched their first blockchain-focused phone. No. They're up for pre-order. Okay. So anyway, I got a story here from CNBC. HTC launches its blockchain-focused phone, but you can only buy it in cryptocurrency. Oh, how about that? Sticking to their guns. HTC's Exodus 1 comes with a secluded area kept separate from the Android operating system it runs on to keep a customer's cryptocurrency safe. The blockchain-based phone is part of HTC's shifting strategy regarding smartphones, which will prioritize software and intellectual property. Oh, yay. It is available for pre-order at a price of 0.15 Bitcoins. Or 4.78 Ether tokens, which translates to about $960 and is expected to be shipped by December. So pre-orders are up. You should be getting it before the end of the year, and it's going to cost you approximately $1,000. Now, interestingly, the developers at, I don't want to spend a whole ton of time talking about this. I want you to know that it's out there and that you can try it. What I think is really fascinating, because guys at HTC have been doing the rounds about the Exodus 1 on various news sources, including with CNBC. Particularly HTC's Phil Chen, who is the decentralized chief officer. I mean, this is so much fucking marketing on HTC's part. Come on. You know, they're just trying to toss in every little fucking trope that they can from blockchain. Did anybody else read the Onion's Guide to Blockchain? Holy fuck. But they're just tossing tropes. But I do appreciate some of what Phil Chen is saying. I mean, Phil Chen of HTC, who's really, behind this phone quite a bit, was basically, fortunately in a lot of the press that he was getting, was saying, hey, we know this is niche. We don't exactly know what people are going to do with the blockchain phone. Now, it can run DApps, and it has this, again, kind of a secure enclave where it can hold your private keys and all this. But Phil Chen is, I was kind of surprised at the honesty that he was putting out there, basically saying, again, that, we don't know what this is going to be, how this is going to take shape, what people are going to do with it, how it's going to change the game, whatever. And even though he doesn't exactly say this, it kind of felt like he was admitting this might be a complete flop, and it might not work. But I do appreciate his attitude. And this is a direct quote from Phil Chen of HTC. Quote, "And the reason why you do a blockchain phone is for everybody just to own their own keys. Everything starts there. When you start owning your own keys, then you can start owning your own digital identity. Then you can start to own data." So the basic point that he's making is that once people get used to having control of their data, and when he says keys, of course, he means private keys and so on. Once they get used to controlling their own data, having more of a stake, which peer-to-peer technology allows for, having more of a stake in the broader network that either the economy or DApps or whatever fucking runs on, then there is a mental shift that happens with people where they realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't just give my data over to Facebook or to Google or to Apple or to who the fuck ever. And I do appreciate that attitude on HTC's part, because that might be the biggest company I can think of, even though HTC is a far cry from its glory days of any kind. Okay. From days with the HTC One or even before then when they were making the original Nexus and so on. They used to be a real power player. Now they're just not. But they still might be the biggest company, I think, that's ever admitted to that, saying, no, you know what? Fuck the share and shit and everything else. You want to be in control. You want to be in control of your money. You want to be this is in a very real sense saying be your own bank. This is, all kinds of things. This is a great attitude to be approaching things with. However, and despite the fact that these blockchain-focused phones, or blockchain phones as people are calling them, have this separate, more or less separate hardware from the Android operating system, I still don't trust it. And they're open about that too, that there's no such thing as 100% security. Fortunately, Phil Chen will come right out and say that. Great. But that this is a step in the right direction, I don't know that it is, because I don't know that smartphones are a step in the right direction in the abstract. But I do at least appreciate that that's the attitude, that's the marketing pitch that they're going forward with, is that this is about you having control of your data, having control of your money, having control of your software, and so on. So I don't have a lot of hope for this. Okay, you can buy one, you got $1,000 to spare, you got 0.15 BTC, whatever, go for it. But I don't really think this is going to take off, but it'd be interesting if I'm proven wrong. But I do love the attitude that's coming with it. I really, really do. Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo!
From Big Finish Productions, Blake 7, The Classic Audio Adventures.
I'm taking Liberator in on manual. We'll be in teleport range in 2 minutes.
What the hell was that?
Information. Liberator has been attacked.
You don't say.
Put up the force wall.
Confirm.
Message to all ground commanders. Initiate the final phase. Let's crush these rebels once and for all.
My name is Avon. Kerr Avon.
Kerr Avon.
Our hostage arrives, which may be unnecessary.
As a hostage, it's nice to be superfluous.
You can go to Blake7.com to find more of the new adventures of one of science fiction's greatest masterpieces, Blake 7, at Blake7.com.
Important messages.
It is time for Important Messages, where I get to the emails sent in to me by the Sovryn Tech listeners. And got a little bit of a fun one this week. In fact, this is one I was supposed to do like 2-3 weeks ago, but I ran out of time and wasn't able to get to it. But it's just a fun one. You know, this is nothing too serious here. Not going to give you any like real recommendations or anything like that. Not going to get any deep philosophy whatsoever. This one's just for fun. And it kind of reminds me of a lot of the questions that I get into for Patreon, which every Wednesday, for Sovryn Tech patrons only, we do a Wednesday Q&A where I answer as many of your questions as I possibly can, and I just bat them out, you know, and I love doing it. It's so much fun. But this is a fun question. Hey, Stallion. Hey, Stallion. I noticed in the past you used to do a lot of top 8s, and I notice on Patreon that you also do a lot of top 8s. But I got to know, who is your favorite film score composer? Glad you narrowed that down a little bit. Film score composer. Because if you ask me who my favorite composer is outside of that, not going to be able to give you the best answer, even though I do listen to a lot of opera. I listen to a lot of classical too, but boy, you know, if I ever told you, I don't want to get lost in the weeds on this, and I really do want to answer your question, and we don't necessarily have a whole ton of time. But I always thought, you know, people would listen to a lot more classical if the DJs on the classical radio stations or wherever classical's getting played were a little more metal, you know, then here comes Bizet with, you know, Les Troyens, you know, I mean, just really intense, you know, really have it. And instead of this whole, and that was, I mean, you can't get excited about it. Granted, you don't get excited about classical necessarily like you would with, you know, metal, but still, just an idea, just a thought. But yeah, my favorite film score composer. Boy, you know, I am a fan, I am a big fan, and this person's probably heard me say it in the past, that if film scores, as in soundtracks, not soundtracks with actual songs, but with classical, you know, with scores, you know, theme music and so on. If that were a genre, that would be my genre. I would not be a metalhead. I would be a soundtrack person, I guess. I don't know what the hell you'd call that. I could come up with something stupid, but why bother? So to answer your question, you know, my quick answer is fairly easy. The first thing that comes to mind for me, Jerry Goldsmith, instantaneously Jerry Goldsmith. But, you know, beyond that, I mean, I could go a whole hell of a lot deeper. I mean, I could go way deeper. But Jerry Goldsmith, you know, I mean, the late, great Jerry Goldsmith, unfortunately. You know, I imagine people expected me to say John Williams. No, John Williams is phenomenal. And actually, I guess he was admitted to the hospital this past week. And boy, I hope nothing happens there. Even though, he's 80-something, I think. And he's still composing, you know, he's still doing the new Star Wars movies and everything, which is amazing. But Jerry Goldsmith certainly went well into his later years as well before he passed away. His son, Joel, also is a fine composer, did work for Stargate and so on. I like a lot of what he does. Actually, Joel Goldsmith did what I consider to be the most beautiful composition perhaps ever done, which is the love theme from Call the Conqueror with Kevin Sorbo. Don't laugh. Go watch that fucking movie. I thought that was a ton of fun, and that soundtrack's amazing. Even though you can't get the actual full-on parts of that. There's some parts of that soundtrack, for some reason, on the actual soundtrack that Varis Sarabande released. I don't know what the hell happened there, but it's not the same music. Anyway, yeah, Jerry Goldsmith, I mean, you know, and where do you start? Right? You know, his scores for Star Trek are legendary. especially Star Trek the Motion Picture. You can get into, the 13th Warrior. I mean, you just type in Jerry Goldsmith, and it's a who's who of like every great fucking movies, minus whatever John Williams did, scores. I mean, he did it all. So I kind of have to give it to Jerry Goldsmith. And believe me, I love John Williams. I mean, like the work he did with Superman, Dracula, even the stuff he did for Lost in Space, and of course Star Wars, and I mean Indiana Jones, and Jurassic Park. Those are all so easy to pick out, and they are considered either the best or some of the best in history. But, it's tough for me to just say Jerry Goldsmith, because then at the same time, and this is something I like to do, like who do you, when you go to the greatest, because I consider Jerry Goldsmith the greatest. When you go to the greatest, you say, well, who inspired you? Who do you think is the granddaddy of them all, right? And Jerry Goldsmith actually has an answer for that. And he would tell you it was Alex North. Why would I debate him about that? Alex North did Spartacus, Cleopatra, so on. Alex North is brilliant, as a composer. So is Alex North actually the best? Just like, people say, well, the greatest guitar player ever. Oh, Jimi Hendrix all the way. Well, who did Jimi Hendrix say was the greatest guitar player of all time? You'd say Terry Kath from Chicago. So who's the greatest guitar player, right? But you're not really asking me who's the greatest, just saying who's my favorite. But even if I didn't say Jerry, like even if I said, all right, no, if I discounted Jerry Goldsmith for some reason, and I wouldn't, but even if I did, okay, who else would you say? Would you then say John Williams? No, I'd actually probably hand it over to Basil Poldori. Crazy. Hunt for Red October, RoboCop, Starship Troopers, the Conan movies. Holy fuck, those scores alone. I mean, those are, man. Well, it says it right in the opener. I mean, High Adventure. You bet your fucking ass that's High Adventure. Oh man, or Craig Safan. I mean, there's so many to choose from. That really, like, it's easy for me to just say Jerry Goldsmith, just like people ask me, okay, who's your favorite director? Ridley Scott, right? But then really, I'm much more, when you get into nuance and like experiments and stuff, I like Paul W.S. Anderson a whole hell of a lot. And not Paul Anderson, Paul W.S. Anderson. Yeah, that guy. Go shit yourself if you disagree. I'm not saying he hasn't made bad movies. He has, but he's also made a ton of great ones. And actually, I can only think of a couple of movies of his that were actually even bad. So, I mean, it's tough, to call that kind of shot. But I really, especially like the Mummy soundtracks that Jerry Goldsmith did, and all of the the score for Star Trek First Contact. Come on. I mean, that was just phenomenal. And there's so much more, I mean, yeah, he was the master. I know he wants to say Alex North was, and Alex North was great, but Jerry Goldsmith, that's where it's at. So anyway, great fun little question. We won't spend a ton of time on it, but I'll be right back with some more Sovereign Tech. Woo! Hey, I know what you're thinking. Wow, this is a great fucking show. And you know what? I agree with you, and I'm not just saying it because I'm the host. Woo! But I am the podcast champion, baby. And let me tell you, if you want to help out the podcast champion, you want to help out the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, and you want to make Sovereign Tech an even bigger show, here's how you do it. And don't worry, it's not for free, and you get something out of it. You go to Patreon. You go to patreon.com/SovereignTech, SOVRYN Tech. Patreon.com/SovereignTech. Become a Sovereign Tech patron, and you will get access to literally thousands of hours of bonus content. There's new content every week. You get to be in the live Q&A hangouts that we do every month. You get to access to the Wednesday Q&A. Do you like that important messages segment? We do one every single week, and it goes a good hour strong, if not longer if needed, depending on how many questions there are. That's only for patrons, and all you got to do is at least $1 a month. Some do significantly more, and I'm honored by that. But become a patron, support the show, help it grow. Patreon.com/SovereignTech. And I thank you to all the patrons already out there and all of the ones to come. Patreon.com/SovereignTech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
It is time for HackSec. And oh boy, did a story drop just this past Wednesday that I did not see coming. And I'm still kind of chewing on. Anyway, I'm reading here from Gizmodo, or Gizmodo, but we call it Gizmodo. Apple reportedly blocked police iPhone hacking tool, and nobody knows how, by Rhett Jones here. Let's read a little bit about this. Yeah, I know, that headline, like, you want to talk about, if that was clickbait, it got me, because, wait, what? Reading on. Apple's latest iteration of iOS has reportedly turned the Gray Key hacking device into an expensive doorstop. Law enforcement around the world has taken to using Gray Key to break into locked iPhones, but it appears Apple has finally gotten ahead of the device's crafty manufacturers. For now. Forbes' Thomas Brewster has been on top of the Gray Key saga from the beginning. On Wednesday, he cited sources from the forensic community who've told him that Apple's efforts to keep bad actors and law enforcement from cracking into its users' phones have paid off. According to the report, the $15,000 tool, that being Gray Key, made by a shadowy company called Grayshift, is now only capable of performing a partial extraction of data. It can pull a few unencrypted files and some metadata that's virtually worthless. One source that went on the record for Forbes, Captain John Sherwin of the Rochester Police Department in Minnesota, confirmed that the release of iOS 12 has hobbled Gray Key's abilities to unlock a phone. Quote, "That's a fairly accurate assessment as to what we have experienced," end quote, he told Forbes. So Stallion breaking in, apparently on the field, this has been proven. Reading on. It's still unclear what exact change could have been made to shut Gray Key out. Previous reporting has told us that the tool uses a workaround to brute force its way in by guessing a user's password until it gets it right. Apple has protections in place to stop that kind of tactic, and Grayshift's methods are a closely held secret. Not much is known about the company. In March, Forbes reported that Grayshift counts at least one ex-Apple security engineer as part of its team. You can't even view its website without a login given to members of law enforcement, though there have been indications that it works with private entities in some capacity as well. With iOS 12, Apple implemented a highly anticipated change called USB restricted mode. This shuts off Lightning port access on the iPhone if it hasn't been unlocked by a user in the last hour. This was widely believed to be Apple's solutions to foil companies like Grayshift and Celebrite, but we don't know for certain if that did the trick. Apple did not return our request for comment. Whether it's the solution or not, you might want to double check that your phone is set up for USB restricted mode. You'll need to be updated to iOS 12 and go to Settings, Face ID, and Passcode. Scroll down to the bottom of the page, and you want your settings to, anyway, there's a picture of how you want the settings to look. There's no word on whether Grayshift's competitors have hit a wall in their efforts to subvert Apple's security. This is a big money business, and we can expect that whoever loses their cash cow will be working overtime to figure out another workaround. So this brings up a couple of points that I want to get into quickly. First off, I am not exactly sure why the fuck Apple would do this. It's not like Apple's opposed to working with law enforcement. They're not opposed to it. Okay, unless it's some kind of money-making deal. I mean, it comes off as very odd. And the answer that personally I can't believe is that Apple actually wants to thwart law enforcement. I would more believe that Apple did something that thwarted Gray Key that was otherwise designed to thwart, say, opposing governments. Or, well, I say opposing governments because I think the tech giants are corporatist cooperatives with the U.S. government and so on. So I could believe that this is more about either stopping, or maybe they're concerned about the Russians, because they believe that sort of horseshit. Whatever it is, I think this is more about thwarting, shall we say, foreign actors than it is about thwarting, U.S. Law enforcement. But that's a nice way to spin the tale. That's a nice way to market this, to say, oh, see, we're even protecting you from law enforcement. When if Apple was really doing something against law enforcement, don't you think the government would be like, hey, motherfuckers, what are you doing? We're going to talk more about this during the wildcard segment, because I think that there's another story that kind of points at this, that there's something, if there's anything shady, I'm not saying that Grayshift isn't a shady company, okay, but there's something shady going on with Apple and maybe Amazon as well as far as all this goes. Something really, really weird about this. So anyway, yeah, I have a very hard time believing that this is about U.S. law enforcement and about stopping law enforcement. I think this is more about, again, stopping opposing foreign actors of some kind. Hell, it might even be about thwarting, I don't know, industrial espionage on the part of China, who try, a lot of Chinese companies, not necessarily even the government, but just companies, try to, make, and they make iPhone competitors effectively. And maybe it's to try and stop that. But no, I don't believe that it's to try to stop, again, U.S. law enforcement. Now, that said, it doesn't mean it's not a great thing. It's a fine and dandy thing. I think that's wonderful. Please, can I get this on Android? Probably not. But wouldn't that be nice? The more security we can have, the better, regardless of necessarily its intent. But then that brings me to the second point with this. Grayshift is not a government agency, okay? It is a private company that is, effectively selling to the government or aspects of the government ways to infringe upon your security and privacy. This should bother you. This should rattle your idea that, government's the problem, blah, 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 blah. No, I mean, in general, people wanting to thwart your security and privacy are a problem, and that doesn't just mean asshats in the government, even though certainly government is the most egregious, so I won't argue with you there. But I want you to be aware that there are a lot of private individuals who are more than happy to take advantage of other agencies, public or private, that have an interest in cracking into your systems. And this is why whatever you can do, you can say to yourself that, I can't do anything about what the NSA can do. Okay, maybe you can't thwart the NSA, but you might be able to thwart Grayshift. And that is just as worthwhile. It's not just security theater when you go through the things we talk about on Sovryn Tech. Get them implemented, use them, take the time, learn how to do it, because you don't know who's coming after you. You think you can't stop the government? Well, again, like I said, you can stop asshats like Grayshift. We'll be right back.
The most incredible television event ever as you join the crew of Battlestar Galactica.
Right here, you creepy crawling. I have led the entire human race to ruin.
The last of mankind, fighting for life in a hostile galaxy.
Most of us are dead.
Alone, with only one hope, Battlestar Galactica and her crew.
There is no other destination.
Commander Adama, Captain Apollo, the intrepid Starbuck, and the dazzling Athena, searching for a new and peaceful world.
May as well live for today. We might not have many left.
Let the attack begin. A new age of high adventure, Battlestar Galactica.
GameTalk.
It is time for GameTalk, where we talk some video games. Now, little heads up. If you're not a patron, you don't know this. This will be the very last GameTalk on Sovryn Tech Prime. Now, does that mean GameTalk's going away? No, it's far too popular for it to go away. What it is doing is it's now a actual separate podcast series. Yes, it's its own series that happens at least once a month, if not twice a month, sometimes maybe more, on the Sovryn Tech Patreon feed. But you got to become a Sovryn Tech patron. Now, not just any Sovryn Tech patron. You have to become what's called a dilettante of the triple black arts on Sovryn Tech's Patreon. And that means you have to pay at the $5 level to get access to this all new podcast series. And we're already 2 episodes deep. Now, it's not just a podcast series. It's also, the first 2 episodes are just a podcast, but episode 3 and forward are going to be full video and it's not just me sitting in the BDSM studio. Like, there's going to be, effects, production, the whole thing. Okay. So if you want to hear more Game Talk, you're going to have to become a patron, and you got to become a patron at least the $5 level. And if you want to do more, Satan bless you. I think that's wonderful. So anyway, for our very last Game Talk, I want to talk about something that I think is incredibly exciting. And I love it. And what it is, even though it's not without its flaws, there are some oddities. What it is the Neo Geo Mini. I finally got my hands on one of these babies, pretty much as soon as they were released. Now, there's the Japanese edition of the Neo Geo Mini, and then there's the international edition of the Neo Geo Mini. I obviously got the international edition, even though I probably could have gotten away with the Japanese one and, done all right for myself. Used to go to Japan way too often. So anyway, this is an amazing little device. I mean, it really is. Again, not without its flaws, but it is an amazing little device. When you open it up out of the box, It is in many ways a very self-contained system. Okay, now obviously it's a miniature version of the very, dare I say, notorious video game console and also arcade cabinet system from the 1990s. This was legendary at the time. And it was legendary because while, it was initially designed as an arcade cabinet system, you could buy a home console version that gave you the same exact experience, minus the cabinet, of the arcade cabinet system that you'd find at Pizza Hut or your local arcade or whatever. Okay. The Neo Geo, most people, in fact, I know very few people that ever even really had a Neo Geo in the 90s, growing up or whatever, because this system at the time cost like $650. And we're talking the early 90s here, I think, when that came out, adjust that for inflation today, and you're talking almost $1,500 that this, we're literally talking about just the system, $1,500 landed in your house. Yeah. You can see why not many people had this thing. So in and of itself, spending $110, I think it is, for the Neo Geo Mini International is a minor miracle. Because it is such, as far as the performance of the system, it's brilliant. I mean, I'll just put that out there right now. So this is my Neo Geo Mini International review. But it's also, for that $110, as impressive as it is to get 40 Neo Geo games, and there's some missing from it, like Windjammers, I wish that was there, and there were a couple others, but some of the big ones like King of the Monsters 1 and 2 are there, Samurai Showdowns are there, Final Fight, Blazing Star, and so on. It's a great selection of different types of games. The Metal Slug games are there. Just the bulk of what people would want out of it, I think, are there, even though you could certainly get those games on other consoles. Like the Nintendo Switch has a very impressive Neo Geo selection, including Windjammers, which is kind of a cult classic now, but it's been a cult classic really for a long time. Just, other people are finally catching up, I guess. So anyway, the Neo Geo Mini, out of the box, it is a self-contained system. You could literally pull it out, okay, and it looks like a very miniature, as in it has a 2.4 inch screen on it, LCD screen, but it looks like a miniature arcade system, okay, arcade cabinet. And it even has a little joystick that works. In fact, it doesn't just work, it has a little blue ring around it that lights up and everything, has a start and select button, has all 4 buttons on it. You could play this just with the console itself. You never have to plug it into a television. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. In fact, if you try playing Blazing Star on a 2.4 inch screen, that's a shoot 'em up, kind of like Gradius and Life Force and so on. Good luck. That's just not going to work very well. You're going to want some kind of magnifying glass like they used to put on the old Game Boys or something. But it does have its own speaker. It also has a headphone jack on it. So, you don't need speakers. You don't even need headphones, even though headphones are nice with it. It does have, as far as ports, it uses 3 USB-C ports. One of them is for power, and the other 2 are to plug in Neo Geo controllers. Okay, that way you don't have to use the mini joystick on it all the time. Even though the mini joystick does feel pretty good, it's probably the best controller as far as all involved with this. The odd thing is that, and this is where you run into a couple problems with the system. Like I said, the way SNK made this is officially an SNK product who created the Neo Geo. They just did beautiful work. The menu all works great. There's no slowdown with the games. They all play beautifully. It's a really, really slick setup, okay? And you got to love having that little arcade cabinet that's totally playable, even though that sort of feels like a bit more of a gimmick. But you put it up on a 1080p screen and everything looks great. There's no problem there. But here's where some of the problems come in, is that you are paying $110 for one of these retro consoles, okay? It doesn't come with a power brick. It only comes with a USB-C cord, with no way to plug it into the AC. Now, are they expecting people to have a television with a USB port on it, or to have, a USB power brick, a AC adapter available that comes with their smartphone? Sure, I think that's exactly what SNK was hoping for. And they're far from the only company that does this sort of thing. When you buy a Kindle from Amazon, a company the size of Amazon, you can say, well, SNK is cutting corners. Well, Amazon does too. You have to spend another $20 to get an official power brick for a Kindle from Amazon. It doesn't come with one. So I don't, some commentators have been kind of knocking them for this. I don't think that's ridiculous at all. I don't think people are used to having USB-C, dealing with that so much. I mean, that's the future and it's here. but people are still kind of falling into that. I mean, there's still plenty of devices sold, including Nintendo's own mini consoles that use, micro USB. So anyway, USB-C, I mean, that's not that big of a deal because it has a USB-A at the other end, and, most people do have a power brick or a TV that they could plug, or they have a USB port somewhere that they could plug it into, and then it works. It would have been nice if the Neo Geo Mini had a battery, had like its own internal power, but at the same time, you could also just plug it into like an Anker, battery that you keep around to recharge your smartphone when you're in trouble. And you could power it portably with that. And then you really do have a portable mini arcade cabinet. I mean, it's really mini, but it's impressive, that you could even do that. I've done it and it works beautifully. So there's a problem there. The other problem, and in fact, this delayed me from doing my review, because the other problem with it is that the HDMI port on the Neo Geo Mini is a mini HDMI. It's not a full-size HDMI, and it doesn't come with an HDMI cable, which is also different from all other consoles, retro consoles that have been sold to date. All of them come with their own HDMI cable. Or, the C64 Mini comes with one. The Nintendo Mini consoles all come with them. And I think that was actually a poor design choice to go with, with the HDMI Mini. Now, I mean, all I did is I bought a couple of inexpensive adapters that go from full HDMI to mini HDMI, because I have so many HDMI cables laying around. Why buy a mini HDMI cable, when I already have them, and just get some adapters and keep them in a case for it. That ended up working very well, and it's no problem, but I think that was a flub on their part, especially since they are charging the highest price of any of these retro consoles. Now, I mean, in some ways you could argue that's almost fitting and ironic for Neo Geo, for SNK to do that with the Neo Geo in comparison to its competitors. And let's be clear on that. This is an entire competitive class. We have, the mini consoles have become, in many ways, their own console generation outside of the 8th or 9th generations, But let's get into the next flub. The next flub is really the controllers, the gamepads. Now, normally, I think it only comes with one. In fact, I think in some ways when you buy it, it doesn't come with any. Of course, granted, it doesn't need them. But most of the ones that I saw, it at least came with one gamepad. But if you want to do two-player, and most of the games on this console are two-player cooperative or competitive, you're going to end up hashing out another $25 or so for an official Neo Geo Mini gamepad. I have tested it with other gamepads to, using a USB-C adapter and so on, and I don't think the problem is the USB-C adapter. The only gamepads I've been able to get it to work with, and I've tried arcade joysticks and everything, and SNK was saying at one point they were thinking about releasing full arcade sticks for this, full-size ones. I really wish they would, because, again, you can't use to date, you can't use any other gamepad controller, and I don't think the Neo Geo Mini is like the C64 Mini where there's going to be firmware updates. This does not connect to the internet at all. That's fine with me. That's a positive, not a negative in my opinion. That's a positive, okay? But no, you can't connect, you can't put an Xbox One controller to it. You can't put any of them to it, even when you use a USB-C adapter. You have to use the official gamepads. That's kind of bullshit in my opinion, but I would accept it. I'd be okay with it if the gamepads were a little better. Now, they feel fine. The quality feels really good. The thing is, the D-pad is this weird circular business that just moves way too freely. Way too freely, and it feels odd. It feels very, very odd. For example, I mean, kind of like with a 3DS, which has a proper D-pad as well as a circle pad, which is much what the Neo Geo Mini gamepads feel like they have, is more of a flat circle pad. Those work well for certain types of games. Like if you're playing Blazing Star, which is, again, a shmup, it's a shoot 'em up. Those controls feel really good. But when you get into fighting games and you're doing, if you're playing Samurai Showdown or one of the Final Fights or King of Fighters or something like that, and you're going for very precision movements, it is not the best for that. In fact, it's pretty rough. So the gamepads kind of suck. And the only part that sucks about them is their directional pad or their circle pad, whatever the hell we want to call that. So I wish you could have used other controllers. But I get it. at the same time, it's tough to knock off too many points for that, though, because you can kind of get used to it. It sucks that you have to get used to it. Even if it was a little clicky, like if you had some kind of feedback of the motion that you're making with the circle pad on the gamepad, I'd feel better about it. But I don't know, it just doesn't work exactly. All of that said, with the 40 games that it comes with the overall presentation, the fact that it's very much a self-contained, other than power, it's very much a self-contained unit and all that, I think this is my favorite of the retro consoles so far. And I can't imagine anyone that's going to beat it. Like, even when Sega comes out with theirs, I don't think it's going to best it, unless they're going to do like this kind of mini arcade cabinet style thing where it has its own screen or something. I just think this is way too cool. And the fact that you're effectively playing with 40 games included, and we're talking about a system that normally is like $1,500, the fact that we're playing with something that is, equates to about $10,000 in system, from, back in the 90s, it's a minor miracle that we're even able to do this. It really is. And to do it so beautifully. I love the system. I want to play it like all the time, even though one of the problems with arcade games, which the Neo Geo, they are effectively arcade games. I mean, they're literally, not effectively, they literally are, is that often they're very short, right? They're very, very short in comparison to, your more traditional JRPGs and so on. Now, they can have a lot of replay value because of either the cooperative or competitive aspects, but they're very short. And so this is really something you want to do two-player a lot, unless you just want to hone your skills at Samurai Showdown or something, But yeah, I mean, it's just so cool. It really is cool. When you finally have it like in front of you, it's pretty amazing when you're messing with it. So I give, if I was to give it some kind of a score, like 4 out of, like 5 stars, 1 star being the worst, or 0 stars being the worst, and 5 being the best. I want to give it a 4. I should probably give it a 3 because of those goddamn gamepads and the mini HDMI flub. I think that's a real flub, but no, I got to give it a 4 because overall it is a really, really badass little system. And I can't believe there's still plenty of them for sale. I figured this one would have sold out because how many could they have produced with everything that's in this? I mean, it's easily the most complex retro console developed. It's not like the C64 Mini where you can add your own games or anything. If it had that would probably put it at 5 stars. I don't care what the controllers feel like. But maybe we'll end up where someone will find a controller or some way of figuring out how you can actually get other controllers to work with it. Or maybe SNK will realize they've got a moneymaker on their hands and they'll end up selling arcade sticks, full arcade sticks after the fact. That would be nice. And I look forward to that because they've already started developing and selling products and accessories for the Neo Geo Mini after it came out. Like they have protective screens from SNK officially that go over the LCD screen. They have other stickers that you can put on the arcade cabinet and some other things. So maybe that'll end up being a thing. I hope. But it's really cool, and the presentation is second to none. And I don't think any retro console is going to best it as far as that goes. But fuck, I wish that the really unforgivable part is the gamepads. Like that's the part that stinks. Otherwise, I'd still give it 5 stars. But yeah, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. So anyway, if you want to hear more Game Talk, you make sure you become a $5 patron at least. And all right, I'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Hey, you heard about it at the top of the show. I have a whole new book out. Well, not whole new. If you signed up for the Sovryn Tech newsletter at zog.email, again, that's zog.email, you would have read some of these stories in an earlier form. But this is the Sovryn Universe. You love the fictional aspects of Sovryn Tech, baby. This is your book, Sovryn Universe, Volume 1. You can find it on Amazon, and it's going to be in all other places very soon. But for right now, if you want to get on your Kindle, get the ebook version, you get it on Amazon. You just type in Sovryn Universe, or there's a link in the show notes for this episode, and you can get your hands on it. It's only $2.99. It's a bunch of short stories, some of which are exclusive to this book. They will only ever come out for this book. They will never come out on paper Patreon. They will never come out in the Sovereign Tech newsletter. They will only be in this book. And boy, can I tell you, the ladies love these stories, okay? A pure hotness. You know I do erotic science fiction like no other. You want to get on this. Sovereign Universe. You can go to zog.email to find the link for the book. You can go to Amazon and just type in Sovereign Universe, Sovryn, or you can find the link in the show notes. Check it out. Thank you in advance. Woo! Let's get back to the show. Go get it. Go get the book. Sovereign Universe, Volume 1. It's fucking awesome.
Wildcard.
It is time for Wildcard, where I talk about all of the, well, I can talk about anything, honestly. But this week, got a little story from The Verge here, and it's relative to what we were talking about earlier with what Apple has done with iOS 12, keeping it from Gray Key being able to access your device or the data on your device, or at least the data it can access is supposedly meaningless. And here's the headline. Homeland Security backs Apple and Amazon's denials of Chinese microchip hack. Quote, "We have no reason to doubt the statements from the companies named in the story." I'm just going to say this quickly, okay, before we read the whole story. So basically the argument is that, was it Forbes, I think, or Bloomberg? It was Bloomberg that had been putting a case together for years, which Bloomberg isn't going to really put their reputation on the line by going after Amazon and Apple, two of the biggest companies in the world, if not the two biggest companies in the world, and attacking them, saying that, hey, you're putting in Chinese chips into your devices, iPads, Kindle Fires, whatever, that is sending, damning data to the Chinese government, okay? You don't just make that kind of claim if you can't really back it up. Okay, now what's really odd about that is that DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, who has regularly warned you about buying highway phones, ZTE phones, and so on from Chinese manufacturers, because they told you, well, those phones that you buy, I know you got them for a great price, but I think that we think their hardware is sending, data. Is leaking data and fucking with your privacy and sending it all to the Chinese government. You might not want to be, you don't want to buy those phones, right? You had Joe Biden himself coming out about that. But then for some reason, DHS is willing to come out with their neck on the line saying, oh, well, we have no reason to believe that that's happening with Apple and Amazon. That should come off as very worrisome and very concerning. Like that's almost weird. And if I were to come up with a quick answer as to what the hell's going on, I would say something to the effect of, oh, well, the U.S. government doesn't want to lose their little candy shop with what information they collect by you buying Apple and Amazon devices, right? I mean, like that's just if I were to be quick about it. But why don't we go ahead and read the story here? Actually, computer, what the hell's that? Didn't I tell you to change that sound?
Apologies, Agent Sovryn. There has been a security breach in Unimatrix 0. There are unrecognized patterns in the virtual reality system.
Computer, take Unimatrix 0 out of standby now. Hard shutdown. Authorization NCC.
Pattern translation laser activating. Prepare for entry into the virtual reality grid.
Oh, no. Computer, turn the laser off now. Turn it off. Oh, fuck. Oh man, this isn't happening. It only thinks it's happening.
Agent Sovryn?
Elizabeth?
It is you, Brian.
Jane, where did you two come from? I haven't seen you in...
Well, for a man who said he didn't need virtual reality to have a good time. Agent Sovryn? Oh no, they got you too.
Who got me?
Agent Sovryn.
Nostra.
Yes, welcome to your Unimatrix Zero, and to your doom.
Oh boy.